Hello and welcome to All Indians Matter. I am Ashraf Engineer. The 2011 census puts the number of disabled people in India at 2.68 crore, but that's widely thought to be an undercount, and the actual number may well be three times that. According to a report last year by market intelligence firm Unearth Insight, the right policies and strategic shifts by employers can enhance job opportunities for people with disabilities, with at least half of them having the potential to be employed. However, the report says that only 34 lakh are either self employed or have been employed across the organized and unorganized sectors and through government led schemes. How do we ensure greater employment inclusion for the disabled?
All Indians matter.
We have on the show Meera Shenoy, founder and CEO of Youth4Jobs. Meera is a social entrepreneur in the disability space, a pioneer in the skilling of youth with disabilities and linking them to jobs at scale. She was executive director of the Employment Generation and Marketing Mission, the first state government skilling mission for Andhra Pradesh, which she set up and scaled. This mission influenced the union government's skilling policy. She then consulted with the World Bank across Southeast Asia. Later, she returned to support the Office of the Advisor to the Prime Minister for Skilling. She set up Youth4Jobs 10 years ago, and it is now South Asia's largest organization, skilling less educated and educated youth with disabilities and linking them to jobs. This work has touched 7.9 million households, and the organization is a one stop shop for more than 900 companies on their journey of inclusion. About 30,000 youth with disabilities have been skilled and linked to sustainable livelihoods across India. This work has won the highest national and international awards like the MIT Future of Work Award for Asia, the Inclusion Innovation Challenge, and the Global Zero Project Award. Meera's inspirational book, You Can, was launched at the Jaipur Lit Fest and is in its third edition with a Hindi translation for grassroots reading. Meera, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ashraf. Good to be here.
The social discrimination faced by the disabled has been much discussed. A subset of that is what they face when they seek employment. Could you describe what a disabled person in India faces when they go out looking for jobs?
Many youth tell me that they pass the online assessment, but where they get left behind is in face to face interviews. I, in fact, personally remember going to a premier girls' institute in Chennai. I met their topper, a speech and hearing impaired. She topped even the jobs online assessments. But in all the face to face interviews where disability is no longer masked, she was never hired. I was so excited to see such a bright girl that we arranged a special interview, and she not only got a job, but at a salary higher than her non disabled sister.
So there's no question of talent here. There's no dearth of talent. It's a question of prejudice, perhaps, or bias, is what you're saying, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, certainly.
And Meera, is this discrimination faced only by those who are unqualified? But is it also faced by the qualified? Now, I'm referring here to engineers, technically qualified persons, master's degrees holders, etc.
I think in India, the more educated you are, the more difficult it is to make you employable. The same is exactly the case with youth with disabilities. The challenges are more because with the degree, the youth now have higher aspirations without having the necessary competencies. And of course, disability is one more barrier in the job market.
Yeah, that's true. But what about sectors that have actually been open to inclusion? Which sectors have led the way when it comes to hiring the disabled?
I think definitely the IT sector is pioneering,
I
followed
thought you'd
by
say that, yeah.
followed by the hospitality sector, both the hotels and the restaurants especially. Then I would say that the public sector mainly because of the reservations of jobs there. Recently, however, post COVID, sectors like the e-commerce and logistics have opened up in a very large way to hiring youth with disabilities.
Yeah, that's good to hear. The disabled have been marginalized for very long. The moral need to be inclusive is, of course, critical, but very few people understand that it also results in a huge loss to the country in terms of GDP growth. Could you detail that for us?
I think there are different ways of looking at this issue, but it's an extremely important point. And therefore, what is important is that we need to invest in them. whether it's the government, whether it's the innovators, whether it's the startup entrepreneurs. Just to give you some statistics, for example, a child in a low or a middle income country, if we give them access to assistive technology tools, it can make a difference in the life to about $100,000 in lifetime income, because then he has a level playing field, and therefore we need to provide whatever it's necessary, whether it's assistive technology or simple tools, to all. Some studies show that the benefits can be almost $10 trillion for the next 55 years. And if you actually look at it, I saw a recent study which said that if you just invest in simple four assistive products, which are hearing aids, prosthetics, eyeglasses, and wheelchairs, the return will be the rate of return on investment will actually be 9:1. So it's really amazing, but no one looks at it as either an investment opportunity or the how does it benefit the economics.
Yeah, that's true. Even where the disabled are employed, their colleagues often report a sense of discomfort in working with them. And I think this comes from being unsure about how to interact with or treat a disabled person. How big a barrier is that?
I think this comes from the fact that even in urban society, many people don't know how to talk, leave alone work with a person with disability. Then and therefore they're not comfortable. So quite often we recommend that companies must have a buddy system. This works so well because actually there's cross learning which happens again and again. We have MNCs and companies which tell us not only does the youth with disability, of course, he gets confidence, but the non disabled manager, who's the buddy, realizes how many challenges this disabled youth overcomes to be where he is, that he begins to appreciate. And I think what it does, it makes lesser mortals like us compassionate.
Actually, in most cases, the disabled can perform as efficiently as anyone else, but there is a huge awareness gap about this. How do we bridge this gap?
When we began 10 years back, we realized that the big difference between working on the value chain of taking a non-disabled youth to his first job and a youth with disability to his first job is the fact that not only do you have to do a lot of work at the youth end, but you also have to do a lot of work at the company's end. So each time, you discover a gap in the company's end, you put in a service there. So, for example, there's a whole range of services which are done, like sensitization workshops, and these are specialized and customized from the board level to the managers level to the supervisors level, and for the different industries. Obviously you have to customize them. Then we do things like giving them a job. We call it the job role matrix, which is telling them which job, which disability, and what's the kind of workplace infrastructure tweaking you may need to do. Then accessibility audit, sign language workshops if you're hiring a speech and hearing impaired. So you need to do a whole range of services at the company end just to make sure that there's a sensitive ecosphere and that the hired youth can be productive. This is extremely important because it's only then that the hiring gets mainstreamed in the organization. Otherwise, it still remains as a mere tick in the box, which is not what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was going to ask you next what changes should corporations and HR departments make to become more disabled inclusive. But I think you've covered a lot of that anyway. But what I also wanted to ask you is, it certainly needs to be thought of as more than CSR, doesn't it? There's more to it than that.
Our mantra is hire youth with disabilities because it helps your business, not out of pity, sympathy, or empathy. I think that's extremely important. And what is important is that you must encourage companies to measure the impact of your work. When you do that, and the companies actually measure and see how it helps their business, then you will see that there's a lot of ownership, and then your work actually has a ripple effect because one company tells the other, or it publishes a case study, or it puts a story on YouTube, and the message spreads.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you seeing a change in employer attitudes, more openness to hiring the disabled? What are they telling you?
I think so. When we began 10 years back, I remember um, I was simply dumbstruck to see how little companies knew about disability. People already knew me, the companies, because of the previous work which I did in the EGMM. So companies came basically to see what is this new work madam is doing. But when they came to our training centers, they actually told me things like, why can't you give me some of the old youth, meaning non disabled youth? Okay. So then we had initially thought maybe we should run these centers in an inclusive manner, but that strengthened my resolve that you should just keep it only for youth with disabilities, so that companies and all stakeholders know that if they come to you, then you are only the voice of the disabled. Okay. And that, I think, was a great choice which we made, which really helps. Today, on the other hand, we work with about 990 companies, and many of these are companies who contact us just directly. Okay. And what's happening, I think, in the next few years with ESG coming, and in S, inclusion and diversity is important factor, you'll find more and more spotlight coming on disability.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. ESG is becoming very, very big, I think, in corporate circles, and therefore the ripple effect of that on this sector too. What are the advantages of hiring a disabled person? For example, we know that there is a lower employee turnover rate in their case.
Yeah, quite often I think the measurement indicators one looks at is that higher productivity and lower attrition, which is extremely important for companies, especially those with small margins. Like if you see the manufacturing sector, or if you see the services sector like retail, okay, I can give you a recent case of a manufacturing company which we worked with. They wanted only girls with disabilities. They were hiring only girls before. So the CEO heard me and he said, "Meera, can you help us with girls with disabilities?" We said, "Why not?" We looked at their processes. There were some 64 processes which they had, and we found 40 processes we could actually put in the speech and hearing impaired girls. They put a target of 2%. Since it worked so well, when they measured, they enhanced it to 5%, and today it's at 10%.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is that uh, the moment corporations actually try being disabled inclusive, they find more and more advantage to it, and they are more and more interested as they go along. What's your favorite story of Youth for Jobs placing a disabled person in a firm and then excelling?
Many of our youth get productivity awards. Sometimes, they share it with their trainers, because their trainers is the link which they have. And of course, we celebrate it. But I think, some stories leave the mark in your mind. Okay. So let me quickly and crisply tell you two. One is this girl who we had trained. She was speech and hearing impaired, and we put her at the facility center of a large MNC. So 3 months later, the person who had invested in her trainings, who was the uh, retail global retail head of one of the largest MNCs in the world, she said, "I'm coming into town, Meera, and I want to meet this girl." Okay. Now this girl was only 6 months in her job. Okay, from the village, we've trained her, and she was working, yes, in a large MNC. Now I was so nervous that I decided to go with her to the hotel, only out of nervousness. Otherwise, I don't go.
Almost as
Okay.
if you were on test yourself.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So there I took her, and she was least nervous. So we went over there. Uh, the lady, to make her comfortable, had brought out a book of photographs and was showing her husband's photograph just to make the girl comfortable. And I was so amazed that our alumni, she had become so confident that she immediately began asking her jobs in sign language, but my interpreter was there to interpret, asking her, "Oh, you're married. Why do you not have kids?" Okay. And then she asked her this incredible question. She asked her, "Does your husband beat you?" And I was like dumbstruck. She thought it was so natural. Are husbands beat, no, in the villages. So, maybe this French woman's husband also beats her. She was carrying over her experiences and she looked so puzzled and asked me, "What is this?" I said, "No, that happens in the villages. So, since you're married, she's just asking, how is your husband?" So, that was one which really showed me that they pick up so much confidence and so fast. And the second was this girl who we had placed in a TV. She was working in the library. She was expecting a baby. I didn't see her. She's called me out and she said, "Ma'am, I want to thank you." I said, "For what?" She said, "No, yes, trainings, but what I want to thank you is for a job." Her story was she had married a bank clerk. Okay. He had a second-hand car and came to pick her up. And she said, "This would never have happened if I did not have a job." So a job allows you to marry better. And don't forget, Ashraf, their kids will all get better education, better health, all paving the way for a better India. And that's what I think is so inspiring.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. In fact, my next question is related to that. When a disabled person is employed, there is a change in their social status and within the family too. They go from being dependent to being a significant contributor to the running of the home. And in some cases, they may even become principal bread earners. So, talk us through this.
I think that real life transformations are inspiring even for us. And if it's a girl with disability, they have four burdens on their shoulders. Okay. You're rural, you're poor, you're disabled, and you're a girl. Okay. So the impact is really, I always tell everyone, the impact is just magical. Our alumni bring money month after month compared to the erratic income which their fathers, who may be a marginal farmer or a petty shopkeeper, and the amount is 100 times more than what the father has ever earned. So the youth saves, sends part of his salary home, which gets used first to return the high cost debt which the father has. First, that's the first thing the parents start doing. Second is then the health becomes better. They start spending. Always the younger sibling is educated. And suddenly you see this youth with disability from being the underdog, from being a liability, he becomes an asset and the darling of the family and community. I've actually had youth telling me, "Madam, my little aunt and uncle who was little money, now they're calling out of the blue. They never spoke to them before, thinking that here's a family, who has, because disability is also perceived as a curse, in villages. There's several myths surrounding it. So this family actually is quite often in the bulldogs because of this youth. And suddenly this economic and social status, makes people reach out to you. Many of them have a giving spirit, and during COVID, for example, they worked tirelessly for the others, either in stitching and distributing masks, distributing commodities. So we brought out a book, Ashraf. It's called The 50 COVID Stories, which is a very widely read book. It's requested by libraries, India and abroad. So I made it downloadable if anyone wants to read it. It's downloadable on the website. And this is basically to celebrate the kind of difficulties the youth had in COVID times. Yes, they needed a job desperately because the parents had lost theirs. But to come for the interviews, to take up a job when there are lockdowns, when there are buns. So this book is only to dedicate the indomitable spirit.
So, this is downloadable from the Youth4Jobs website, is what you're saying.
Yep.
What about at the policy level? You think there's more work to be done? And if yes, what?
This government has passed a very good legislation. It's called the RPWD Act 2016. It's on the lines of the UNCRPD, and many advanced countries also don't have this kind of legislation. It makes education and employment a right for the person with disability for the first time. It also has certain dues for the private sector too. However, the problem is there's always a caveat. The implementing of the legislation is left in the hands of the state governments. So it's not yet been implemented the way it should be done. But I always tell the private sector, I put a slide always because You don't know when the government will decide to make this their agenda. And when they do, everyone better be prepared. It's anyway helping your business. And, additionally, it's mandated by the government. So these two make it a very valuable reason why you should begin on the inclusion and diversity path.
Right. Just for the benefit of the listeners, I'll say that RPWD stands for Rights of People with Disabilities, and the UNCRPD is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
That's right.
So tell us about the journey of Youth for Jobs and its impact so far.
Our vision is to take the youth with disabilities out of the vicious cycle of poverty to the virtuous cycle of opportunity through education and livelihoods. Today, in 10 years, I just started it because I wanted to do something very different. And I thought, my last avatar, I've done government, I've done multilaterals, so the last should be as a social entrepreneur. And I thought I should choose a most difficult problem when no one's working on. So I took disability, but today we've grown to be the largest in South Asia and evolved from being just a skilling organization to a system changer because that's what is needed here. So our work is at three levels. One is changing mindsets, whether it's in companies, whether it's in village communities or in colleges. Then we work with technology, whether it's a job platform or assistive technology. And skilling, we have basically three large models. One is for the less educated, which is pan India. We have for the educated in colleges, it's called the College Connect. And for the visual impaired, based on their request, we have coaching for the government exams. We work at scale. As you rightly said, we've touched about 7.8 million households. We work with about 990 plus companies. I think what is most important is that we love the work we do. Every parent, Ashraf, worries what will happen to their child with disability when they die. So again and again, when they see us, they keep blessing us over and over again. And I think it's this amazing positive energy that helps us to move forward despite any challenges being there.
So what's next for the organization?
I think next is we're working on three levels. One is an area which I'm working myself, which is to open the sector up to allow international organizations to work with Indian organizations so that you can showcase their work and we can learn from them and our models get showcased. So I plan to bring one of the largest conferences to India. Technology. So for the first time, we are setting up in the country the AI triggered job platform for youth with disabilities. And that is an offering not just for us, but it's for any NGO, any company, any government who wants to work and hire youth with disabilities. So we've called it Swaraj Ability, Swaraj Gandhian because it means economic freedom. It's ability because leveraging the ability through tech and jobs. So we launched the beta version. We have a wonderful partner, IIT Hyderabad and the office of the PSA. Many people have, come forward to partner with us. I think the actual launch will be 2 months hence. And this is definitely going to be a game changer. And the last is we believe while we invest in technology, you really need to invest in the community. So we are setting up a grassroots academy where all what we do in the urban areas, we're going to put it on its head and do it at the grassroots level. So if you have a sensitization workshop in English, you'll have a sensitization workshop in Tamil or Hindi or Gujarati or whatever language, depending on the pace at which we go. And we're going to see what are the kind of local jobs because we really found that, especially during COVID times, when I looked at the data, there were a lot of young women with children, young widows with disabilities. All of it were looking for livelihood options around their home. So we decided that now we should give them what they want.
Sounds very interesting. So here's a question, Meera, I ask all my guests at the end of the show. Why do you do this work?
I think I like this nice saying of the Dalai Lama. What he said was, be generous, be selfish. This work, when you do it, Ashraf, it does not leave you untouched. Remember, we see the transformational impact of our work every single day because our numbers are not some numbers of training the trainers or something. We touch every youth with disability, train them, put them into a job, and follow them at least for a year. I think it touches you inside out and makes you a giving human being who always places the other before the I. And that's what keeps me going.
Meera, thank you for coming on the show. A more inclusive society is the need of the hour, especially when it comes to the disabled. So, thank you for telling us how it can be achieved.
If anyone listening to this show wants to make high impact, join me, Meera Shenoy, on my journey at www.youth4jobs. It's a number 4.org. Thank you, Ashraf.
Thank you all for listening. Please visit allindiansmatter.in, that's ALLINDIANSMATTER.in for more columns and audio podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at Ashraf Engineer, that's ASHRAFENGINER, and All Indians Count, that's ALLINDIANSCOUNT. Search for the All Indians Matter page on Facebook. On Instagram, the handle is All Indians Matter. Email me at editor@allindiansmatter.in. Catch you again soon.